is why.
Human Family by Maya Angelou. I know the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some cry and comedy. Some portray their lives or lives as super friendly, and others claim they really live the real reality.
Good morning. My name is Ethan Kropp, and today I'll be introducing our speaker, Mr. Carl L. Solomon. Carl L. Solomon is a native of Columbia, South Carolina, and is the owner of the Solomon Law Group, LLC. Mr. Solomon is a graduate of W.J. Keenan High School and Florida State University, where he received a bachelor's degree of science in economics. He went on to attend the University of South Carolina School of Law, where he attained his Juris Doctorate. Mr. Solomon has served as president of the South Carolina Bar, president of the Columbia Lawyers Association, and on the South Carolina Association of Governors Board of Directors. He is a current member of the following organizations: Richland County and American Bar Associations, South Carolina Association of Justice, American Association of Justice, where he is the co-chair for the National College of Advocacy, Columbia Lawyers Association, and National Bar Association. Mr. Solomon is admitted to practice in the state's courts of South Carolina and the United States Federal Court, District of South Carolina. Mr. Solomon has been involved in several notable cases in South Carolina and has been honored by the Inclusion, Best Lawyers in America, Super Lawyers, $1 Million Advocates Forum, Multi-Million-Dollar Advocate Forum, and Litigation Council of America. Mr. Solomon is the youngest child of James L. Solomon Jr. and Helen K. Solomon. He is married to the former Takesha James of Latson, South Carolina, and they have 2 children, Carl Lewis Solomon II, who is 16 years old, and Clark Solomon, who is 10 years old. Both Carl and Clark attend school in Richland School District 2. His son is a former Blytheville Middle School Charger. After the musical selection from Mrs. Balashiro, the next voice that you will hear will be our speaker, Mr. Carl L. Solomon.
Good morning. I want to say both thank you for having me as part of such a momentous occasion and how proud I am to share the program with the talented people on the stage today. Reagan Richardson, Pamela Ashford, Ava Timoni, Layla and Morgan, and the impressive Ethan Kropp. Don't take my job, Ethan. The Blythewood Band and Chorus, Principal Mazik, and the administration of BMS. Thank you for letting me come back home. I am back where my son went to school for 3 years and my daughter will be here in 2. I'm proud to be here. I'm thankful to be here, but if I'm being honest, I'm something else too. I'm a little bit nervous. Now don't get me wrong, I've been an attorney for more than 25 years. Yes, I'm old, which means among other things that I talk for a living. I talk to judges, to lawyers, to clients, and to juries. And even when it comes to talking to crowds of hundreds or thousands, I have a lot of experience with that. But you're a little different. You're my BMS family. You see, I grew up a little further down Wilson Boulevard in Meadow Lake Subdivision. And Principal Mazik, we had a saying, real recognizes real. And I want to tell you what I've learned is real. Family is real. The effect your family has on you is real. And the fact that each and every one of you has a loving and supportive family is real. You see, a loving family pours wisdom into you, so you're prepared to make good decisions. A loving family celebrates when you do well, gives you strength with a kind smile when you're down. A loving family corrects you when you're wrong. Sounds like a lot of your teachers, coaches, and administrators right here at Blythewood Middle School. A loving family inspires and propels you to go further than you ever thought you could. But to bring this back to Black history, love is not only the strength of the Black family, but the survival of the Black family is the most enduring legacy of Black history. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "The group consisting of the mother, the father, and the child is the main educational agency of mankind." Now, I don't mean to disagree with Dr. King, especially during Black History Month, but I'm not willing to say that if you don't have a father and a mother in the home, then you don't have a family. Roughly 46% of all children born in South Carolina right now are born to single mothers. It's almost half. Over 40% of all children in the state live in single-parent households. About 83,000 live with neither parent, 63,000 live with their grandparents, and somewhere between 4,000 and 4,500 are in foster care. But you see, Dr. King said this too. Without love, there is no reason to know anyone. For love, in the end, will connect us to our neighbors, our children, and our hearts. In other words, there's the family you're born with, and there's the family you choose. And through the line connecting them all is love. But choose wisely. Now, why do I think it's so important to talk about family here during Black history? Well, I'm glad you asked. Even if you didn't, I'm going to pretend you did. It's because the first thing the slave traders did when they docked in Charleston wasn't to feed the men, women, or children in their cargo hold. It wasn't to clothe them or to clean them or even to discipline them. It was to separate and sell them. They would separate husbands from wives, brothers from sisters, parents from children. They took them apart because they knew, just like Dr. King knew, that the first step in breaking a spirit is to isolate it. Remember, the group consisting of the mother, the father, and the child is the main educational agency of mankind. It's a circle of caring, comfort, and community, and they wanted to break that circle in an attempt to break the family. A father or mother will defend his child. A member of a family will shelter, defend, comfort, and teach another. That's true for humans as it is for animals. But what happens when you take the family away? When a person has no one to turn to, then they live in terror, and they're willing to do anything to make that stop. That's what they did, but the scars of isolation didn't work, because there's another secret. You're never alone. You see, despite the best efforts to stop it, family took root among the slaves. Not a family of blood, but of choice and of love. Slaves from all across Africa who couldn't communicate through a common language created one. That's how Gullah was created. Religious traditions more varied than you could possibly imagine came under one shelter of Christianity to create something new, the AME Church. The sounds of Senegal mixed with the drums from the Congo, and the stories from the Ivory Coast came together to birth a new voice, a new sound, jazz and the Delta blues. And people without family adapted to become a family all their own. A family all our own choosing. You're never alone. But with all the struggles that we've been through, I understand that things are often difficult. It's okay if you're frustrated, if you're disheartened, or if you're angry. I am too. But that's not all I am. I'm also encouraged in the face of all odds. You see, there was a man once, a man who grew up in a little town outside of Atlanta called McDonough, Georgia. And like a lot of you, he looked at his parents' lives and struggles they met every day and wanted something different for himself and his children. So he studied hard, and after 6 years in the Air Force, he ended up at Mars College in Sumter, South Carolina, where he earned a chemistry degree. Now that's more than 50 years ago. So it was incredibly rare that a young black man would go to college, and even more remarkable that he'd get a degree in chemistry. But he didn't stop there. He went to Atlanta College where he earned a master's degree in mathematics before returning to Mars to work for 3 years as an administrator. Now, those accomplishments alone are fairly amazing from where he came. But those were the options that were open to him, so he took advantage of them. You see, a black man could go to Mars College and Atlanta University because they were black schools. But again, that wasn't enough. So in 1963, he and two others, Robert G. Anderson and Henri Monteith Treadwell, became the first black students since Reconstruction to attend the University of South Carolina. His name is James L. Solomon Jr., and he's my father. But he's your history. He's also your family. Just like Milton Kempson, Majestica Simpkins, I.S. Levy Johnson, and Henri Monteith are also your family. Now, I told you all that so I could tell you this. One generation. One generation from the fields of McDonough, Georgia, to an attorney in Columbia, South Carolina, the heart of the old Confederacy, in one generation. And I tell you the real secret. We're not the only ones, and you're not alone. Now look, I know you've heard this 1,000 times from your parents and from your teachers, and probably every adult you've ever met. Life isn't fair. And that's correct. Life ain't fair, but it ain't fixed either. Look, the obstacles are real. From poverty to prejudice to everything else, the challenges set before you are almost impossible to overcome. Almost. But that's the reason to never give up or give in. Because while the weights try to hold you back, they also make you stronger. There's one more point that I want to emphasize again today. You are not alone. Even when you stand alone, you are not alone. The blood of your ancestors runs through your veins and your DNA is encoded with the I can't stop, I won't stop of earlier generations. Like Kendrick Lamar, you've got loyalty and royalty inside your DNA. You've got the wisdom and the strength of a family that was poured into you, and sometimes you don't even recognize it until it comes pouring out at the right time. You were born like this, and you were born for this. Even when your struggles and circumstances think they have you isolated and cut off, the lessons of your family will guide you. But you must listen to them and you must learn them. So when you look around here at BMS, recognize that great people are preparing you for great things. Embrace them, make them count, and be a part of that BMS family that you can count on. Thank you for having me here today.
Have
This might be one of the most recognizable piano lines of the 20th century. But it can mean any number of things to any number of people. It's from a song called The Entertainer by Scott Joplin. To some people it could be a Western saloon, to others a great caper, to some an ice cream truck, and to many a silent movie. But with all these different connections, much of The Entertainer's historical context is forgotten. And so what many people don't realize is that The Entertainer is one of the finest achievements by one of the greatest musicians in American history. People don't realize it's part of a tragic story of a visionary artist who died young and penniless and was buried in an unmarked grave. And many people don't realize just how this artist's work still influences the social and musical landscapes of America a century after his death. In 1970, a musician and musicologist named Joshua Rifkin dug up Joplin's sheets, self-playing them. He released those recordings as an album, Scott Joplin Piano Rags, and it started a ragtime revival. 3 years later, several Joplin songs, including The Entertainer, would be featured in George Roy Hill's Oscar-winning film The Sting. Scott Joplin was alive once more in the hearts of American pop culture. Amidst this resurgence, people dug up Treemonisha, which had been forgotten about after Joplin's death. And then in 1972, 61 years after it was written, Scott Joplin's opus saw its world premiere, performed by the Atlanta Symphony under Robert Shaw. It was immediately recognized as the masterpiece that it is, and in 1976, Joplin posthumously received a Pulitzer Prize for Treemonisha. The world was ready to embrace the late Joplin and celebrate the brilliant, forward-thinking artist that he was. And amidst all of this, after laying unmarked for half a century, Scott Joplin's grave finally received a marker in 1974.
African-American history dates back to the colonial period, when Africans were brought to the colonies as slaves. Yet Black history was largely ignored by historians and the general public until the 20th century. At the forefront of the push to bring Black history into public consciousness was a scholar and son of former slaves, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Born in Virginia in 1875, Carter Woodson escaped poverty through education, ultimately receiving a doctorate from Harvard University in 1912. Throughout his studies, Woodson had noticed that the role of African Americans in American history was either misrepresented or missing altogether from the history books. Determined to encourage Black studies and tell the stories of his people, he founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life in 1915. A year later, he began publishing the Journal of Negro History, now known as the Journal of African American History. Page by page, African Americans wrote themselves back into the history books. Encouraged by a swell of support, Woodson organized the first annual Negro History Week in 1926 for the second week of February, to coincide with the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. The civil rights movement of the 1960s reflected the growing pride and cultural identity among the Black community. By the nation's bicentennial in 1976, African Americans were embracing their heritage and reminding America that Black was beautiful. 26 years after Carter Woodson's death, Negro History Week became Black History Month as part of the bicentennial celebration. Dr. Carter Woodson left an indelible mark. His work ensured the long and rich histories of African Americans would never be forgotten. Black History Month continues his legacy. We honor the people and their achievements in celebration of the African American experience.
Notable African Americans from South Carolina.
Dr. Matilda Arabella Evans, born 1872, died 1935, from Aiken, South Carolina. Dr. Evans was the first African American woman to ever become a licensed physician in South Carolina.
Charlotta Spears Bass. She was born in 1874 and died in 1969. She's from Sumter, South Carolina, and in 1952, she was the first African American woman to run for office of Vice President of the United States.
Mary McLeod Bethune, born 1875, died 1955, from Maysville, South Carolina. Bethune founded Bethune-Cookman University and the National Council for Negro Women, whose goal was to represent the national and international concerns of Black women.
Septima Poinsett Clark, born 1898, died 1987, from Charleston, South Carolina. Clark helped establish citizenship schools. The goal for these schools was to help Blacks in the South learn to read and vote. She is known as the Queen Mother of the Civil Rights Movement.
Clayton Pegleg Bates. He was born in 1907 and died in 1998, from Fountain, South Carolina. Bates lost his leg while working as a child laborer in a cotton mill. Despite this challenge, he had a successful career as a tap dancer and a Broadway star.
Dizzy Gillespie, born 1917, died 1993, from Cheraw, South Carolina. At the age of 12, Gillespie taught himself to play the trumpet. He began recording music at the age of 20 and played a major role in the rise of modern jazz.
Judge Matthew Perry Jr., born 1921, died 2011, from Columbia, South Carolina, the first African American federal judge in South Carolina.
Juanita Willman Goggins, born 1934, died 2010, from Pilgrimton, South Carolina. Willman Goggins was the first African American woman who was elected to the South Carolina House of Representatives.
Charles Bolden Jr. was born in 1946. He was from Columbia, South Carolina. Bolden is a graduate of the Naval Academy. He received the rank of Major General in the U.S. Marines and later became an astronaut. He was the first Black administrator of NASA.
Chadwick Boseman, born in 1977 and died in 2020, from Anderson, South Carolina. Boseman was an actor best known for his role in 42, true story of an American legend in Black Panther.
Notable African American inventors.
George Washington Carver was born in 1864 and died in 1943. Carver was best known for creating peanut butter, but this was only one of his 518 inventions. He also created ink, dye, soap, and synthetic rubber.
Madam C.J. Walker, born 1867 and died 1919. Walker was the first African American female to become a millionaire. She earned her money after she created hair products for African Americans.
Marie Van Britten Brown, born 1922, died 1999. Brown, along with her husband, created the first home security camera. The original design included all of the foundations of today's security cameras.
Garrett Morgan, born 1877, died 1963. Morgan created the traffic light, a hair straightening product, and a respiratory device that provided the blueprint used to design World War I gas masks.
Lewis Latimer, born 1848, died 1928. While Thomas Edison is credited with creating the light bulb, Latimer created longer-lasting light bulbs when he created the light bulb filament. He also helped create the telephone and the early air conditioning unit.
Alice Ball was born in 1892 and died in 1916. Alice Ball was an African American chemist who developed the first successful treatment for those suffering from Hansen's disease, leprosy. Notable African American influencers. John Lewis, born 1940, died in 2020. John Lewis was a civil rights and congressional leader. He spent 3 decades in Congress defending the gains he had helped achieve for people of color as a 1960s civil rights leader.
Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson was born in 1875. He died in 1950. The self-made scholar promoted Negro History Week as part of efforts to embed Black studies into the American education system. He was the second African American to receive a doctorate from Harvard after W.E.B. Du Bois.
Oprah Winfrey was born in 1954. She is a billionaire media executive and philanthropist. Oprah Winfrey is best known for hosting her own internationally popular talk show from 1986 to 2011. From there, she launched her television network, Barack Obama, born in 1961, and Barack Obama was the 44th President of the United States and the first African American to serve in the office. First elected to the presidency in 2008, he won a second term in 2012.
Tarana Burke, born 1973. Tarana Burke is a civil rights activist who was the original founder of the Me Too movement, which she started in 2006. It later became a global phenomenon that raised awareness about sexual harassment, abuse, and assault.
Martin Luther King Jr., born 1929, died 1968. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister and a civil rights activist who had a seismic impact on race relations in the United States beginning in the mid-1950s.
Kamala Harris, born 1964. Kamala Harris becomes the first Black and South Asian woman to hold the second highest office in the federal government. She was sworn on as the Vice President on January 20th, 2021.
Ija Charles. She was born 1997. Ija Charles, a graduate of Westwood High School, is an artist. At age 17, she was commissioned to paint a mural for a Black History Month celebration in her father's hometown. In the summer of 2020, her painting honoring George Floyd was recognized at the Million Man March in Columbia, South Carolina.
Amanda Gorman, born 1998. She took the podium in front of the Capitol building January 20, 2021 to recite her poem, The Hill We Climb, for President Joe Biden's inauguration. She was handpicked by the First Lady after Joe Biden.